This, it's the 9th of September. This is the audio podcast, show 128. Welcome to 1984.
Yay! I forgot to ask before the show what that title's a reference to. I love the title, but anyway. That was Scott here. I'm Samuel Freeman. Adam Yant is here as well, and we have a special guest.
Indeed, we do. Before we move on to the standard sections of the show, don't forget you can get in contact with the audio podcast via email, show@theaudiopodcast.co.uk, via Twitter @theaudiopodcast. And if you if you ever catch us live on YouTube Hangouts, you can actually follow our notes as we follow them, because we follow the same notes that you read. So that's theaudiopodcast.co.uk/show/128. And before we get to the news, we have the interview.
Yes, we do.
This week we're joined by Matthew Hines of iZotope. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Thank you for joining us. I was excited when iZotope gave us got in contact and said, could you consider an interview? Because I consider iZotope and RX in particular to be one of my life-saving kind of tools for those times when things have gone slightly wrong. So it's a great privilege to meet you. Could you tell us a little bit about RX then, for our listeners who don't know anything about it?
Yeah, absolutely. In a nutshell, it's two things. It's a standalone application and also a suite of plugins in all the major plugin formats that we're used to working with. And it's basically an audio repair and restoration suite. So, there's things that remove background noise, distortion, reverb, clicks, crackles, thumps, plosives, all the sort of typical problems that can come up in recording. Some of which you can avoid but you get stuck with, some of which you can't avoid, especially if you're recording on location or shooting with some sort of portable equipment and that sort of thing. So it's mainly aimed at anyone who's ever had that piece of audio that they just said, man, I wish I could fix that noise or that distortion or that siren in the background. You may hear, I'm near a busy road, so you may hear a few sirens in the back of me right now, but that's, in a nutshell, that's what it's designed to do.
Excellent stuff. So RX3 has been around for a while and something I've used a couple of times, but I understand that there's a new version coming soon, RX4. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the kind of new features that are going to be inside RX?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of fun because I think more so than any previous version of RX, this one was really driven by user request. Not that we haven't in the past listened to our users, of course we do every time, but once we put RX3 out into the world, it had a few features like the dialogue denoiser, which was this kind of automatic, real-time, zero latency plugin, which you could just throw in any host, and that was kind of really great for video folks who had a lot of background noise in their camera mics and that sort of thing, but didn't necessarily feel comfortable tackling audio problems themselves. There are a lot of features like that, but as they got out into the world, people started saying, well, that's great, but now I have this problem and this problem. Essentially, we had kind of educated people that they could fix this many problems, and they started asking, well, how can I fix this many problems? So the new version that we're kind of launching soon has a bunch of features basically designed to save time and enable people to be more creative. So things like an EQ match module is in RX4 Advanced, and that came about because we had a lot of post-production mixers and also audio, music engineers who were saying, well, I recorded a sound with this microphone, and they sound different. I need to match them up. Maybe I need to smooth over and edit, but this was done with an SM57, this was done with a 414. That kind of idea that the EQ profile might be slightly different, so that module's been thrown into RX4 Advanced. There's also things like an Ambient Match module. That really is aimed at sort of anyone that's editing audio for TV and film. Any kind of, I know for me, I do a lot of mixing in that domain, and once you get that scene, the audio's been chopped up to match the video, and so there's a lot of gaps and dropouts, and you need ambiances and room tones to fill those different scenes. And so Ambient Match is just kind of this intelligent tool which says, all right, this is the audio that you have. These are the gaps. I'm just going to fill the gaps with a synthesized version of the ambience that should have been there. So kind of a few tools like that really speed up the... I don't need to spend 10 hours getting the perfect EQ curve to match my microphones together. I don't need to spend a bunch of time cutting and pasting room tone and ambience to try and smooth over an interview or an awkward edit. There's also a leveler module which we've added. If anyone works in Pro Tools or other hosts that have clip gain, you'll be familiar with the idea. It's not by any means revolutionary, but just the fact you can grab a clip and within the clip draw gain adjustments. You add little nodes on a line and you pull them about. And we spoke to a bunch of our users who said, yeah, this is something we do all the time, especially because if they're about to compress an audio track, it doesn't matter whether it's dialogue or music, a lot of the time they'll want to draw in some volume automation ahead of time because that can actually allow the compressor to work less hard, it'll sound more transparent. And they were spending hours and hours doing it, especially some of our folks that we have editing dialogue for feature films. They have 60, 90, 120 minutes of dialogue, and they're drawing in all of this manual volume adjustment. So there's a leveler module which you basically shuttle your audio over to RX, and you basically say, here's my target RMS level, and it goes through your entire audio track, and it will actually match that target RMS level by adding in hundreds, if not thousands, of these clip gain adjustments for you. So it's kind of like an automatic clip gain. So if you load up a mix, you can just kind of level out all your tracks transparently, non-destructively, before you then add the things that sound nice, like EQ and compression. And so that's kind of, it's the general theme here, as you're probably getting a sense, is just kind of workflow. Obviously, there's still great sounding DSP in there. I mean, we do have the de-reverb module, which is extremely cool. We have updated versions of the denoisers, so background noise is obviously something that's particularly common in any recording, sometimes worse than others. We also have there's this new idea of RX Connect, because we started making all these great features, and then people were saying, well, that's great that RX can repair my audio, but I'm working in Pro Tools, I'm working in Logic, I'm working in Reaper, Ableton. Pick your host. People were saying, I am in this host, so how do I get my audio to RX and back? And for a lot of hosts, it's actually kind of problematic. You have to find the audio or export the audio, open it up in RX, edit it, save it, send it back, re-import it. So what we have now is this plugin, AU-VST Audio Suite, called RX Connect, and you basically have this plugin just loaded in your session, and you can select any piece of audio and just say send it to RX, and it actually pulls it out from the timeline. So if you're in Pro Tools, it'll pull any region out, puts it right into RX, and you can do literally everything, declip, denoise, edit, do all of the things that you would usually do in RX, which a lot of people kind of think of as Photoshop to sound, because it has all these visual aspects we could talk about, and then it shuttles it right back and plops it into the timeline. So it's kind of just like this huge suite of audio repair tools, which just plugs right into whatever host you might be working with. So those are the sort of big new themes of the release. I mean, there's we could talk all day about what else is in there, but
that's cool. I think it was with RX3 that the RX document format was introduced. And that includes the thing that really caught my eye with that is that it's got the unlimited undo history saved in there, so you can always go back to all the edits you've made to your audio. Have there been anything else added into the document format with version 4?
Yeah, we've added a few different audio formats. So we've also added, as well as WAV file, this broadcast WAV format. We've also added things like FLAC and OGG, lossy formats, or lossless formats, I should say. So there's a bunch of different ways you can export audio in and out of the RX document. The unlimited undo history is still there. And actually now, by default, when you load audio into RX, it will treat that as a session file just like another host. So you can still overwrite the original file. In that sense, it's still an audio file editor if you want it to be. But it's also now designed to kind of auto-save changes. So we're hoping that you lose less work. If you pull a piece of audio in, you hit save, the first thing it's going to want to do is save it as an RX document. because that way, regardless of what happens, you have the unlimited undo history. So there's a few functional changes as well as the extra audio formats we've added in.
Cool. The other thing that caught my eye when I was reading about this that I hadn't realised until I was looking up for this is that you won an Emmy Award for RX. What was that like specifically? When did that happen? When
we did? So that was actually almost exactly a year ago. Launched RX3, and a couple weeks after that we won the Emmy. Now obviously the Emmy wasn't specifically for RX3 because it takes a lot longer than 2 weeks to win. Although that would be nice. But really, so it's a technical Emmy, and if you read the small print, it says it's awarded for a company that's changed the way television is transmitted or presented or what have you. So for us, it was a huge honor because it was basically validation that this piece of software is used in pretty much every single TV show and film. In Boston, New York, LA, London, Berlin, San Francisco, wherever people are editing audio for film and TV, the odds are at this point that they're using RX in one way or another. And so really that's what we won the Emmy for, was not any particular version of the software, but just the general idea of the technology we've developed. Because I kind of had mentioned earlier the idea of Photoshop for sound. So when we pull the audio in, we actually present it as an image. So if there's a cough, you can see the cough over there, or if there's a plosive, you can see it over there. And we have things like a magic wand tool, a brush tool, and so people are actually pulling the audio in, painting with it, removing all the problems, and then sending it right back. And that's what we won the Emmy for, just because once they started, I guess in LA especially, people are now talking about RXing it as opposed to let's fix this or edit this. They just say, well, no, let's RX that. And I know it's very popular in a lot of the post studios in Soho too in London. So it was a huge honor for us. I mean, we were very excited, but it's also a validation. We already knew that people were using it there, and now we have this nice Emmy to kind of go out into the world and prove it. So
that's cool. You mentioned the magic wand there. That's works on the spectrogram, doesn't it? Where you can, if there's a background noise that you want to remove, you can select kind of the fundamental that you can see, and it'll automatically get all of the harmonics that are part of that sound, but not the desired sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if anyone out there has ever used Photoshop and you've used the magic wand tool to select a part of the image to then edit, this is exactly the same for audio.
That's cool.
Well, awesome stuff. So, now this is one of these great moments where after we've talked about a piece of software and lots of people will be like, oh, I'd really like to try that, but maybe it's a real hassle or something like that. But one of the great features obviously is that you can get RX on a kind of free trial download. So if you've never played with it and if you've never had a go for it and you're kind of thinking, hey, this sounds like it's going to solve loads of our problems, then you can just go get it, download it, and try it out for 10 days to see if it is actually going to be the solution, which I can certainly say from my own personal experience, if you have a kind of recording that you've made that you can't remake and it's a bit of a mess because somebody junior did it really badly, then this is the way you can fix that problem, which is sometimes a real lifesaver. So I would definitely recommend it. So
sorry, go ahead.
No, yourself, please.
I was just gonna say a lot of people that use RX, they actually come to it because they first encounter the problem. So they might be in a mix, and then suddenly there's this terrible thing that happened that's ruining that perfect take, and then they start Googling, like, how do I get rid of this, or how do I remove this noise? And then it's through that they kind of find RX, and then once they know that it exists and that things like this are possible, because there's also a lot of people out there that don't know yet that this is possible, then it gets pretty exciting.
Awesome. So it would be, our listeners would protest greatly towards me if I wasn't to be incredibly cheeky and just ask us, RX4, is it going to be this September?
It is definitely coming in September, I can say that much. So we are actually flying out, most of the iZotope team are flying out to the IDC show in Amsterdam It's a big trade show, primarily for broadcast technologies. So we will be there. We will be presenting RX4 there. And yeah, it will be out very soon, but definitely in September.
Excellent stuff. Cool. That's really exciting. I know a lot of people are looking forward to it, as am I. And there you go. So I don't know, Matt, if Adam or Sam, if you have any other questions. Otherwise, Matt, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on the audio podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you regarding RX4 and the activities of iZotope. If anybody,
thank you.
Particularly, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, or they've got some other question for you or anything like that, is there a way they could get in contact with you? Or
There's a couple ways. So you could contact support at iZotope.com, and that's any questions. Sometimes people, obviously, they might have a problem or a bug, but other times they have a question on how can I do this better, or how can I make this sound better. Do you have some advice? So the support at iZotope.com goes right to all of us, so we can see that. There's also a contact us form on the iZotope website. And then we also hang out on Facebook, /com/iZotope Inc. and Twitter Inc. So you can say hi to us there and ask questions and so on.
Excellent stuff. Well, excellent stuff. So if people are interested, they will find that we'll also have some of those links up on the audiopodcast.co.uk within the show notes as well for this week. And excellent stuff. I understand, Matt, that you are heading to a flight, so
Yep.
We're saying thank you very much for spending this time with us, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a great podcast.
Cheers, Matt. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
And with that, we go from the interview into the news.
The news, and as we've already said, the show notes are available at theaudiopodcast.co.uk/show/128. And yep, the news section. What's first?
Sam.
I'm just checking. I've hit refresh to make sure nothing's being added. But no, the first news is still Lush Blend. This is a competition opportunity that's been open for a while and has now been extended to the 15th. Blend.io is a project, is a DAW project sharing, collaborating, servicey thing. We talked about it a few shows ago, and they are currently running a competition in collaboration with D16 or D16 with their Lush 101 synth. So a demo version of the synth is downloadable, but it will only work for 30 minutes, and the challenge is to create a tune with the synth, with the instrument in 30 minutes, and to freeze the audio track, upload it to Blend or publish it via Blend, tag it with the appropriate tag, and then the two best tunes will be selected by whoever and will win a full version of the instrument.
That's a nice idea for a project, and also gets Blend involved. As part of that, is it a requirement to upload your session to Blend so other people can access it and be able to do remixes and this kind of stuff?
Yep. So that's how you submit, is by publishing it on there. And I think that I'd have to double check. It's a couple of weeks since I looked at the exact details, but I suspect that by publishing the project on Blend, it automatically becomes, available for people to remix. And maybe it'll always have a Creative Commons license, but maybe you can choose exactly whether or not it's non-commercial or what.
Of course, listeners should go back to, I can't remember the number of the show, but we did talk about Blend specifically a few shows ago, and it's an interesting looking platform. I'm very interested in taking a look at it, and I've still got the tab open from when I opened it in the show. It's still open in my browser, ready for me to go back to it.
And as an added extra, which makes me even more interested than before, because before we talked about which DAW it was supporting and versions and things, but they've now recently added, just yesterday I think they announced that Reason is now supported, which I don't use Reason much, but when I do, it's as part of collaborative projects, and so that's very cool. Very good on the Blend front. And I mean, we should perhaps mention the instrument as well. Lush 101 is a synth. It has lots of different types of synthesis built in, and it features I think its unique thing is the layering of the different parts. So you can have up to 8 layers going. You can have a keyboard split, or you can have different MIDI channels targeting the different layers, or you can have them all simultaneous or combinations. Seems pretty cool.
Sorted. And it's not supposed to be an SH-101 cover, as it were.
I suspect that one of the layers of it does have that kind of thing. But yeah, I haven't. I'm going to have a go with this actually. I haven't given enough 30 minutes to it, but then yeah.
And it doesn't have any functionality built in to playback country samples, does it?
No, I don't think so. We'd have to use something else for that.
I wonder what we could use, Scott.
Well, if you have a hankering to make yourself some country music on the range, was that enough puns for you? I hope so. Then UK Music Apps Limited have announced the release of SessionBand Country Volume 1, which is an iOS app for all kind of current generation iOS devices with over 12,000 chord-based, copyright-free country audio loops, put together by Jeff Gascoigne.
Which is very cool, Scott. You need to add a link in the news item there because it is. Oh, okay. That has been okay. Yeah. Good. I had to Google that before.
So I guess it's two things. I'm saying if you don't know about SessionBand, then SessionBand is a chord-based is a chord-based way of putting loops together, and because they work with the idea of a chord rather than a pre-recorded complete loop, it makes it really easy to do things like auto transposes and kind of transposers and shifts and automated mixing elements in there. So it's a really powerful. It's a very powerful way of doing the thing it does, which is definitely kind of fun to see. Anyway, you can find it on the iTunes store, so it's worth kind of check out. And there's a load more details on their site, which you can find obviously from the show notes.
Also on the software side is have we talked about the Softube Sale already, like a few weeks ago? And is this a completely different thing? Because I get mixed up. We've had quite a few companies doing good sales over the summer for their instruments. Softube are one of them, and we've got details of their sale, which basically runs until the end of September.
Yeah. So Softube are offering a TSA R1, TSA R1R, Spring Reverb, and Tube Delay with 50% off, and the Studio Collection with 30% off until the 30th of September. And they did have some earlier summer promotions as well. I don't remember if there was crossover between them, but this is a new set that we're running just for the month of September. So I guess it's one of these moments where we could remind people that while the audio podcast is definitely the most fun and fulfilling way to consume the material that we offer, the website is far more up to date and doesn't operate on a weekly timetable. So
yeah.
Yep.
So you could have found out about this. You could have had the details of this sale 6 days ago if you'd been passing through the website.
Indeed.
What is the website, Scott?
theaudiopodcast.co.uk.
Yeah, there you go.
And an extra thing is that the reason rack extension equivalents, did I get that right, are 30% off in the Propellerhead store as well.
Yeah, the rack extensions. I think that's the delays and reverbs. I think maybe all that stuff. But yeah, Softube are provided the new guitar amps. I think for Reason 8. I think
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Good for them. Good for them. Have they provided any new microphones?
Only within the modelled amplifier thing.
So if you want to abstract back into the real world, there are some more microphone options available for you. One of them is from IK Multimedia, and that is the Irig Mic Field, which is actually a high quality stereo mic with 24-bit, 44.1 and 48K recording capabilities.
Yep, that is true. However, I think you, like I suspect most people, perhaps have missed the most significant point, because the most significant point of this whole thing seems utterly trivial at first. Because this is how I looked at it. So the big feature of this microphone is the ability to shift the microphone heads by 90 degrees. And you're thinking to yourself, what is the point of doing that? Well, the reason for doing that is it's designed to work alongside iOS, alongside iOS devices. It comes out of the Lightning port connector on it. And the thing that what they've realized is, and I'm sure you've probably had this experience, and many other people have as well, is that if you hold your phone in landscape, generally what happens is you don't get the correct stereo left-right recording. You actually get the equivalent of an up-down recording.
Top and bottom recording.
Yeah. So what this lets you do is get the microphone and turn it 90 degrees, so you get back to the left-right.
So it's useful if you are recording video, for example.
Yes.
And you're recording the audio of the video.
Yeah. The most obvious one is if you're recording video and you want to get the audio and you want to get the left-right perspective right, then this is a great starter. That's the most obvious one. But to be honest, actually, I was just thinking of all those times when I've attempted to record things on a phone, and if you're just trying to balance a phone somewhere, you quite often end up, the position of the microphone ends up dictated by how you can balance the phone or the iPod Touch that you're working with. So here is a way of being able to kind of get a little bit more control over the position of the microphones relative to the people that you're trying to interview when you put it down on the ground. So I was pretty it was one of those moments where I was like, really, that's a feature? It's like, isn't that just gonna snap and break and that'd be like the broken part of this? And then I was like,
you're sitting in the bath and all of a sudden it came to you. Oh, like, wow,
that's it.
It makes so much sense. One thing to say is last week we did mention that there is an Apple iOS event happening today. Unfortunately, we're running the show several hours before this event starts, so we can't say anything about what happens there. But it's an iOS thing, and it's like it's an Apple type thing. This is actually a thing that we should design and build into something, and Apple are very good at that.
Yeah.
Irig followed them.
As Adam has baited me, I'm going to go for it. I'm still going for headphones. I'm going for new headphones being announced today. That's my.
I saw something very silly on Twitter, which was that there's going to be some kind of head-mounted two-speaker system, which is completely ridiculous. Like, the only reason you'd want to do it is to have like a 5.1 system around your head, and you couldn't take it on the bus. You'd look a complete fool if you did it at home.
What are you on about? What do you mean you'd look a complete fool if you strapped two small-sized loudspeakers to your head?
Well, this from a guy who's got the biggest headphones ever made.
Adam, you've reminded me of. I regret buying it now. At the time, I thought it was too expensive, but I saw on a market stall like someone was selling like retro collectibility type things. This pair of headphones. I picked it up, and inside it had two speakers on each side, and it had two sockets for quad listening on your head. This 70s made thing. If I had them now, they were bigger than Scott's and surround sound. So there is kind of like 70s precedent for what you're describing there.
Mm. Yeah. I'd love to see you try and find some music in quad format. Good luck.
And on that challenge, we shall head out of the news section. Next, as Adam has alluded to, there is an Apple announcement today, and I suspect we will probably end up talking about it next week, regardless of how irrelevant it really is to audio.
It'll be the Apple special, and all other news is put to one side. But for now, let's forget news completely and talk plunder.
Indeed. So into the plunder section we go. Wow. Now, 10 minutes before the show started, we had no plunder whatsoever, and we now have a massive amount of it. So let's start with some plunder from yourself.
This is plunder inspired by last week's plunder, which was an Amiga, was it? Was that an Amiga-related thing? Was it? Yep. So thinking of old computers, I remembered Dave's ZX Spectrum and the neural network program he's written for it. So this is from Dave's blog of art and programming. And it's, neural network live coding and retrofitting ZX Spectrum hardware is the title. So the first part's with the neural network. Dave has provided source code and a TZX file for emulators of a program which has a bunch of nodes that you can navigate using the QWERTY keyboard and set different weightings of them, and then the output of this little neural network of nodes is fed to audio, and it creates kind of chaotic sound. It sounds really good. There's a YouTube video example, and the code has also been provided, as far as I can tell, via SoundCloud. He's got the audio, or which you can plug into the ZX Spectrum as if it was a tape cassette and play this 30-second audio through, and it programs it up. Maybe that's what that is. Audio should also.
That's how they used to load programs on Spectrums and Commodore 64s. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
I remember on the Commodore, but it's the fact that it's only 30 seconds long is what confuses me. Like, I remember the Commodore 64 in particular would take minutes. Well, maybe when you're younger, 30 seconds feels longer. I don't know. Or maybe it is quite a simple code. I don't know.
No, it did take a long time. It did take. When you say retrofitted the ZX Spectrum, what is this, like hardware hacking type thing?
So this is the second part, because the video output, the VDU output of the ZX Spectrum was on the high frequency type, which modern televisions don't have an input for, or something. But what you can do is you can open up your Spectrum and, with or without soldering, disconnect the power supply to the little modulator output thing it has in there, add one wire in, and then it changes the type of output such that you can plug it into SCART type input or the composite input.
Right.
So
the TV modulators, the Amiga used to have that as well, because old TVs only had an aerial input and they didn't have a composite or anything like that. So you had to plug in via the aerial and tune the TV in to get the correct thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what that was.
So there's a fairly simple hack that bypasses the modulator, so you've just got the direct output in there.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Excellent.
There we go. Plunderlicious.
Plunderlicious. And now I will go on to my plunder, which is a continuation of Kickstarter Corner, which I can't remember the last time we did Kickstarter Corner, but this week we have the Openmix, which is the smallest, they say, the smallest audio mixer that you can get. And it's about I'd say it's about the size of one of those square iPod Nanos. You know, the ones. Yeah, it's got inbuilt in within it a couple of stereo inputs, but basically it's a crossfader. So the idea is that you plug whatever devices, one into one side, one into the other, via these stereo inputs on the mixer, and you get a dial on the front, and you can very easily switch the audio mix between one and the other. And then it's got a stereo output to run it to a set of speakers. This is something, actually, I look at it and I'm like, I think Sam Freeman might quite like this, because he likes his little mixes.
I do. I think the thing that would put me off a little bit about this is that the two input channels are actually their own physical male plugs.
They're fixed.
So you have to, without using extra wires with gender changes and things, you have to have your devices there. Fair enough, it makes it more compact than having female inputs for the Mia jacks. I've just noticed actually on the Kickstarter page it has a third input for as well as, so you've got the dial crossfader between those main two inputs, but then there is also an input female mini jack for a mix input.
Yeah.
So you can.
It's basically disconnected from the fader, so it'll mix whatever that input mixes, whatever comes into it with whatever happens to be playing through the crossfader.
So in old terms, it's kind of like a 6-to-2 mixer. This.
Yeah, apart from you can't actually, the first two stereo inputs you can't run both at the same time. You can only run one full, the other full, or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Maybe that. No. Actually, maybe that does allow you. If you put it right in the middle, you could have all four, all six running at once.
Yeah, it depends on what the gain curve is as you turn the thing round. I should imagine that it only fades out after the other has come all the way in. I don't know.
I think it strikes me that the image that Adam's put on the top of the story here is kind of completely indicative of the usage case they're thinking of, which is essentially, it's like, you're at a party and using two smartphones, or two iPod Touches or whatever to do the music for the day, isn't it? That's what's going. That's what the design of it is, though. This sort of design element. And
Yeah, I mean
and I think it's to be honest, I'm not sold on it at all. I'm sitting here thinking, what happens if my power, if I'm going to use my smartphone for anything, I probably need it plugged in all the time, and is this thing going to get in the way of the power supply?
Yeah, we've had this argument a lot, Scott, where basically you have a very specific use for your phone. Like, you can't envisage ever using it for recording because then you'll run out of power and you won't be able to check email on the way home or something like that. But this is a very particular thing, and yeah, Sam, you're right. It's for parties, really. It's not intended for professional use. It's just a fun little mixing thing that you can plug in and change your tunes, and yeah, I mean, it's fun. The cheapest one you could get, there's still some available, early bird style, for the first 200 backers. For $29 you can get one, so not hugely expensive either.
And they've got 20 days to go on here, and they're about a quarter of the way to their goal, so good luck to them.
Let's see. And I think one of the goals might be a $10,000 gold version. So there you go. If you want a gold version of this mixer, $10,000 will give you it.
Awesome. That is awesome indeed. The last couple of weeks, I've been reading a lot of history of a lot of history of kind of audio technology and audio engineering.
Oh, I wonder what is that for, Scott? What have you been doing that for?
I've been doing that for my creative pact.
Yes.
My creative pact is not a. If you don't know about creative pact, then you can go check out creativepact.co.uk. Adam has finished his, I presume.
I've completed mine.
Yeah. So mine is not designed for kind of ongoing consumption. It's more there will be an end thing, which hopefully will be kind of worth something, and my intention is to develop it beyond that. But as a consequence of doing this research, this kind of research, I came across the AES Oral History Project, which is a series of interviews conducted by the AES with various kind of practitioners and people within the AES over the years. So people like Ray Dolby, the guy behind the early Dolby noise reduction AV systems, and John Chowning from Yamaha and FM synthesis fame. So the AES is a bit of a weird organization because it is the epitome of everything you think there should be free there isn't free there, unfortunately. But there are excerpts of all these interviews which are very interesting, and I quite often find that if I'm aware of the existence of something, there's sometimes ways of finding the thing you're interested in.
And on that bombshell, we get to the end of the plunder.
I would recommend it to you, though. I would definitely recommend it to you. We
Cool.
haven't made it to the end of the plunder. That is very true.
And therefore we have made it to the end of Tech Audio Podcast. Oh, whoops, sorry, that was a typo. Oh well. Neither of you got that joke.
Oh, I got it straight away. It just wasn't that funny.
I'd have to write it out. For it to make sense, probably.
Indeed, don't forget, if you've enjoyed the podcast, then feel free to subscribe to us. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, G-Podder,
Stitcher.
Stitcher.
Yeah.
If you want to, that's always great. If you have any complaints, then feel free to email us or find us on Facebook or Twitter or Google+. That's perfectly good. If you email us, you almost certainly get I'm a big fan of email. I reply to email. So if you send us an email, you generally get a response. If you Facebook us, I don't know if either of you guys check the Facebook page.
Facebook? What?
I think I would notice the Facebook, and there was a time when I would definitely have noticed the Twitter, but the Twitter is no longer on my radar. I haven't checked the audio podcast Twitter for a while. So if you've been tweeting us, thanks for that. Maybe I'll find out later.
I'm probably the only one who tweets the audio podcast, I guess. I know. I never get responses.
From the audio podcast?
No, yeah, as me, to the audio podcast.
Well, I do check it every now and again. I'm just aware that I tend to remember to check it about now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we used to do the old Twitter feature about, what was that, about 2 years ago, and that was a laugh a minute. That was really fun.
I have actually just started logging in as we're doing the meandering.
Okay, well let's wrap the show up. Expect next week, if there's a show next week, which I don't know, we haven't talked about it, but it'll be an Apple show.
Yeah, I think there can be a show next week. Is there a show next week for you? Okay, Sam, on Tuesday.
I don't know what day, but one day next week. Yep, we're getting to the time of year when days of weeks availability is all up for grabs. But yeah, the audio podcast will continue next week.
Indeed so. There will be an audio podcast next week, but the Tuesday afternoon slot is likely to end pretty soon. But I don't think that's...
And of course, important to mention, Scott, we've now entered 8-bit indexing for the audio podcast because we're at show 128.
Indeed so.
So you need an 8-bit int to be honest, it doesn't really matter who uses 7-bit ints. Oh wait, MIDI does.
MIDI does indeed. That's what the reference. So let's
it does and it doesn't.
What's the reference on the show this week, Scott? The title. Does it have any significance, or is it just a title that doesn't mean anything?
To do the Apple show. Oh wait, let me guess. Because the Apple show today is happening.
It has nothing to do with Apple, actually.
It's happening. I'm going to continue.
But it is a 30-year thing from the release of the original Mac. Cut you off there.
It is. They're doing their show today in the hall that they originally announced the Mac in, and they don't usually do it in there. They do it somewhere else normally.
Yep.
Okay. What is it, Scott?
No, that is perfectly fine. It just struck me that there were lots of significant events that had happened in 1980 as a year in 1984. As you know.
Okay.
Nice. And then we had our discussion about MIDI, and yesterday we spoke about how we made it to the max of the MIDI range, and I thought 1984 is actually the year that the MIDI specification was announced.
Oh.
I think.
You think? I think it was 83. I think, but I think it was 1984 is when it was really being adopted.
Yes.
I think 1983 for MIDI myself. I don't know why. It just feels right.
Well, that's because it was, Adam. That's why.
82 was Robert Moog's announcement that the USI would not be adopted, but would be expanded to become more suitable for task. January 83 is the first demonstration of MIDI working between two devices, which is a Roland and sequential circuit. And there's a cool photo of that actually happening, which I found a couple of days ago. But 84 is actually the point where there becomes the wide array of MIDI actually arrives and stuff like that. And you see,
it becomes more
goes from being
widespread
a niche thing into the general thing that becomes available to everybody.
And that doesn't mean
and
general
the
MIDI.
Mac one as well, and I just thought it was just cool. I just liked it, That's all there was to it.
But it's nice. It's nice we got a couple of different references from it. So there we go.
Indeed so, It should be noted that for some people who are going to now go back through every show title and try and work it out, lots of them are just purely random.
Yeah.
So.
But some of them have multiple levels of referencing, so
That's true. You'll find that the vast majority are all 3 words or fit reasonably well onto 3 lines, because that is the style template dictates that requirement. So.
Sam, have you been running the stopwatch?
No, but I'm going to start doing that for the end of the show. I'm going to start timing the end of the show in real time.
Because I'm pretty sure it's going to take minutes. It was 4:55, 2:55 when we started wrapping up the show. It's now 3:01, so there you go.
And you're the one who went on the extended Apple tribute.
Hey, well, you guys helped me. Thanks.
We did indeed. There you go. So I'm sure the vast majority of our listeners have either fallen asleep, hopefully not at the wheel, or have arrived at their destinations and not made it this far, or else have clearly came to the point where they realise that once the plunder is almost finished, it's time to stop, because otherwise it just goes on. But we should say thanks once again to Matt Hines from iZotope. That was awesome. I thought that was a great interview. I had a blast with that. I've been Scott here, and I've had a lot of fun today, which is fairly typical.
I'm Samuel Freeman. Be back with a stopwatch next week.
And I am, and shall continue to be, Adam Yanch. And as usual, it has been a fun audio podcast. Do remember to catch our next show. See you later.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Dirty.